Hello, everybody. It's me, your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, and this is my series Nails in a Coffin, where we learn that with great kills, there must also come great nails. Well, we're still on a trip through Texas, and currently our trip through Texas is now going to take us into the third dimension. With 2013's Texas Chainsaw 3D. No, I'm not going to wear these the whole time because it's going to give me a headache. This movie acts as a direct sequel to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, ignoring all other films in the franchise. But before we nail Texas Chainsaw 3D, here's a summary of the average nails in the coffin of each of the movies I've covered so far. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre had an average of 1.4 nails in the coffin. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 had an average of 1.8 nails in the coffin. Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, had an average of 1.2 nails in the coffin. Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Next Generation had an average of 1.7 nails. The remake that came out in 2003 of Texas Chainsaw Massacre had an average of 1.9 nails in the coffin. And the last movie I covered, Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Beginning, had the highest average yet with 2.1 nails in the coffin. Some notable cast members, we have, of course, Gunnar Hansen playing Boss Sawyer, and we all know he is the original Leatherface. Bill Moseley is playing Drayton Sawyer, and he played Chop Top in Texas Chainsaw Part 2. John Dugan reprising his role as Grandpa. And we also have Marilyn Burns, who of course played Sally Hardesty, and she plays Verna Sawyer. Sit back, relax, grab your 3D glasses. Nope, you really don't need those. This video is not in 3D. Get those chainsaws gassed up, and let's put some nails in the coffin for Texas Chainsaw 3D. This movie opens up without narration, without text crawl, which is pretty common with a lot of the movies in the Texas Chainsaw franchise. We simply see clips from the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974 with Sally escaping the Sawyers, and then she's in the bed of the truck screaming as it drives away. Now, these are probably this is the best part of the movie with the scenes from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because if you've seen this movie, you definitely know it's easily one of the weaker films in the entire franchise. After the archival footage, our new footage starts with Sheriff Hooper, of course, named for Tobe Hooper, lights and sirens up on his way to the Sawyer's house. When he gets there, he demands that they send out Jed, Leatherface, and he states that they spoke to Sally, and Sally mentioned that Leatherface butchered all of her friends. It's kind of funny, though, because the sheriff just asks for them to send out Jed, not anyone else in the family that is really guilty of murder as well. That doesn't make any sense, and that is going to keep in line with a lot of this movie with things not making sense. Drayton comes out with the shotgun, and he tells the sheriff that Jed was just protecting his house and the family.
He's protecting the house, the family.
Yeah, well, that ain't the way I heard.
BS. Sheriff is definitely not buying any of that nonsense. Meanwhile, we see a bunch of Sawyers arming up with shotguns and rifles getting stationed by the windows. As we see all the Sawyers stationed throughout the house, Boss Sawyer, Gunnar Hansen, is talking to Drayton Sawyer, Bill Moseley, and they're considering should they really send out Jed, even calling him simple or whatnot. So it looks like they're going to be okay with Leatherface taking the fall for everybody.
Give him the boy. He's simple anyway.
Just as the Sawyers decide that they're going to send out Jed, Drayton Sawyer goes to get him, but police backup arrives, as well as a large group of men who want some Texas justice for what the Sawyers have done. This group of armed men is led by Bert Hartman, and shortly after they show up, and right before they're going to send out Jed, somebody throws a Molotov cocktail into the house. This starts a fire and causes a firefight between the Sawyers and this group of armed men. More Molotov cocktails are thrown into the Sawyers' house. It's now fully ablaze, and during the firefight, 8 Sawyers are killed, including Boss Sawyer, Grandpa, Drayton, and the only one to survive is Loretta Sawyer. Even though she is shot, she's able to make it out of the house with her infant baby girl. A short while later, we see that the Sawyer's house is completely burnt down. It's now nighttime, and Gavin Miller finds Loretta Sawyer leaning against a car back behind the Sawyer's property. She's been shot, she's been burnt, and she's holding her baby daughter in her arms. Gavin bends down, steals the baby from her, and then kicks her square in the face, killing her. He then takes the baby with him, gives it to his wife, and they're going to raise this child as one of their own. For a first set of kills in Texas Chainsaw 3D, I'm going to give all 8 Sawyers who died in the firefight each 1 nail in the coffin apiece. That includes Boss Sawyer, Drayton Sawyer, and Grandpa. During the firefight, none of them really took cover or tried to extinguish the fire or really even shoot back at the armed men that were shooting at them. They pretty much just stood there and all got shot. So each one of those 8 dead Sawyers are all gaining 1 nail in the coffin apiece. Loretta, I'm going to give her 2 nails in the coffin. She was shot. I'm sure she was burned, even some smoke inhalation. But she was able to make it out of the house in an effort to save her baby daughter. And for that, you're definitely going to earn some extra points. So Loretta, you're getting 2 nails in the coffin. We now jump forward to 39 years later. And if you have seen this movie, you know that makes completely no sense because Alexandra Daddario does not look anywhere close to being 39 years old. She's working in the butcher area of a grocery store, and we pretty much can figure out she is the baby girl that Gavin had stolen from Loretta before he killed her. Heather receives a letter informing her that her grandmother, Verna Sawyer, has passed away. Heather confronts her parents about this, and they do tell her that she was adopted. Heather, her boyfriend Ryan, her best friend Nikki, and her boyfriend Kenny are in a van traveling to Texas to see Verna Sawyer's house and talk to the lawyer and collect her inheritance. With a callback to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all these kids in a van pick up a hitchhiker, Daryl.
This is my brother Daryl. That's my other brother Daryl.
Daryl feigns kind of getting hit by the van when they're in a gas station, and he's able to con a ride from them, and they decide to take Daryl with them along on their road trip. When they get to Verna's estate, Heather meets with Verna's lawyer, and he gives her a bunch of paperwork that she is not going to read. Heather and her friends explore the house and decide, hey, let's spend the night. So she and the gang leave to go get some food and supplies, and they decide to leave Daryl, somebody who they just met, back at the house to look after the place until they come back. With Daryl left alone at the house, and to the surprise of nobody, he starts to burglarize it. Again, why they decided to trust this person that they picked up on the side of the road and just leave him at the giant house that you just inherited doesn't make any sense at all, but that keeps in line with the nonsense of this movie. While Daryl is going through the house stealing a bunch of stuff, he makes it downstairs into the wine cellar and he finds this large metal door. He's kicking it, he can't get it open, so he's looking for something to open it with. He sees his screwdriver in a box, but he gets a nice surprise from Leatherface, who bashes him in the head with a small sledgehammer, killing him. At 31 minutes in, Daryl, I think you're all going to agree with me on this one, is getting 1 nail in the coffin. He was burglarizing somebody's house, and he's really being loud and obnoxious while he was doing it. He was not trying to be stealthy at all, causing a lot of attention to himself. So, Daryl, easily, you're going to get 1 nail in the coffin, dumbass. After Heather and her friends come back from getting food and supplies, they see that the house is ransacked, but they don't find anything stolen. How they know nothing is stolen doesn't really make any sense since they really didn't spend any time in the house. But they don't call the police or anything, they just choose to forget about it since Daryl is not there. They don't explore the rest of the house together or anything, they just go on with their day. A little while later, Kenny is making dinner and he finds an entrance to the wine cellar. He goes downstairs and he's checking out the wine cellar. It's really dark down there. He's kind of peeking in the dark. He can't see anything. Well, Leatherface jumps out of nowhere and scares him. Kenny goes to run up the stairs, but a common trope in horror movies, he trips going up the stairs and Leatherface gets him in the back with a hook, dragging him back downstairs. Meanwhile, Nikki, Heather's best friend, is seducing her boyfriend Ryan in the barn. Heather is upstairs looking around and she's looking inside of a closet. She closes it and in the reflection of the mirror, she sees the corpse of her dead grandmother Verna, who is played by Marilyn Burns. She freaks out and she runs downstairs into the kitchen where she sees Leatherface probably making some finger sandwiches. She tries to run away, but Leatherface runs and grabs her, throws her down onto the floor where she hits her head on the table leg and is knocked out. Heather wakes up in the basement. She's still groggy. She's laying on the floor. She sees Leatherface pick up Kenny, and he puts him on a meat hook. Again, very common in Texas Chainsaw movies. Kenny kind of smacks him in the head a little bit, but Leatherface grabs his chainsaw, starts it, and he cuts Kenny in half at the waist, killing him. At 42 minutes in, Kenny is killed.
Oh my God! They killed Kenny! You bastard!
Yes, I know that's an old joke, but I still kind of find it funny. I'm going to give Kenny 2 nails in the coffin. Kenny was down in the basement looking around in the dark. He got surprised by a giant man in a skin mask, and he went to go run away, but common trope in horror movies, he trips, he got hooked in the back, and then a short while later, Leatherface kills him in a horrible way. I was kind of leaning towards a 1 nail kill for Kenny, but I really didn't see him do anything that wrong. So I don't think he deserved 1 nail in the coffin, and there are plenty of those ahead of us in this movie. So Kenny, you're going to get 2 nails in the coffin, buddy. After Heather witnesses Leatherface kill Kenny, she's able to run outside, but Leatherface is in hot pursuit. Heather finds an open grave inside this graveyard on the property, which is kind of weird. And she goes to hide in the open grave where there's a coffin. Obviously, it wasn't nailed shut. But she hides inside this coffin, pulls the cover down on top of her. But Leatherface finds her in there, and he starts a cut inside the coffin, giving the audience a really lousy 3D shot. Nikki and Ryan, who were canoodling in the barn, hear all this commotion, and they come outside to see what was going on. Nikki sees Leatherface trying to get into this grave, and she calls out, "Hey!" Leatherface sees Nikki and Ryan, and he starts to run towards them in the barn. Nikki and Ryan run inside the barn. They bar their door shut. Leatherface gets there, and he's got his chainsaw, so of course, he's going to start sawing through the barn door. Nikki is able to find a shotgun in this truck inside the barn. You know, she loads it, and then she says the second worst line of dialogue in this entire movie.
Welcome to Texas, motherfucker!
And then she shoots the barn door. Short while later, we see Heather inside the van. She breaks through the barn door, driving the van in, picking up Ryan and Nikki. Ryan jumps into the driver's seat, and they speed away with Leatherface running after them. Now, to get off the property, there's this large iron gate. Heather is screaming at him, "Hey, the gate has to open, the gate has to open." Ryan, dumbass, thinks he can go through the gate, and he steps on the gas, and this is what happens. After they crash into the gate, the van stalls, but Ryan is able to get it started again, and he backs the van up in an effort to try and ram through the gate again. But in a funny scene, the gate kind of opens towards the van by itself. Leatherface is in hot pursuit. He's about to catch up. Ryan goes through the open gate now, and then the van stalls again once he gets outside the gate, but it kind of looks like he hit the brakes because you see skid marks on the ground. So this causes Leatherface to be able to catch up. He takes his chainsaw and saws through the front left tire of the van. Ryan decides to pull away in the van again. It probably makes it about 40 or 50 yards before he crashes, flipping over, and in the crash, Ryan is killed. At 48 minutes in, Ryan is killed, and this is another easy one for me. I'm giving him 1 nail in the coffin. He tried to ram this large iron gate when Heather was telling him, "Hey, we have to open the gate." So if you time it, they had plenty of time for someone to get out of the van really fast and pull the gate open because it wasn't locked. And the gate opened towards the van, so he tried to crash through the gate, pushing it in the opposite direction. And as I mentioned earlier, once he got through the gate, it looks like the van stalled, but then again, there's skid marks, so he hit the brakes. He just made a lot of dumb decisions because, he wanted to drive. He didn't want to listen to anybody else. So this was an easy one for me. Ryan, you're getting 1 nail in the coffin, buddy. After the van crashes, Leatherface is trying to get inside the van, and he's about to kill Nikki, who's totally useless in this movie. But Heather is able to get out of the van, and she runs away, causing Leatherface to chase her. He's chasing her, and they get to a carnival where the entire town now gets to see Leatherface chasing Heather. We also get a nod to the Saw franchise since Lionsgate purchased the rights to Texas Chainsaw 3D and they own Saw. We also get some really more lame 3D effects for the audience. Next, we see that Officer Marvin, and he is at Vernosaurus' house investigating since everybody at the fair just saw Leatherface. He's looking inside the Sawyer's house and he's currently FaceTiming with Sheriff Hooper and Mayor Hartman. Mayor Hartman is Bert Hartman, and he's the gentleman that led that Texas Justice group that killed all the Sawyers at the beginning of the movie. So Officer Marvin is searching around the house with his phone in his hand, FaceTiming so the mayor and the sheriff can see. The officer comes upon this large freezer, and we pretty much know what's going to be inside the freezer. He opens up the freezer. Nikki jumps out at him, and this dumbass officer shoots Nikki right in the head, killing her. At an hour and 4 minutes in, Nikki was killed, and I'm giving her 2 nails in the coffin. She was shot in the head by a moron deputy. Now, she was pretty much useless in this movie. It's not her fault per se that she was killed because it was that moron deputy's fault, but we're going to get to him next. So for now, Nikki, sorry girl, but I'm going to give you 2 nails in the coffin. Shortly after Officer Moron kills Nikki, he goes upstairs to leave the house, and as soon as he gets up the stairs, he gets a nice surprise from Leatherface, who kills him with the hatchet. I think most of you, if not all of you, are going to agree with me on this one. Officer Dumbass is definitely going to get 1 nail in the coffin. He just had no law enforcement training whatsoever. He was acting as if this was his first day on the job. Officer Marvin, Dumbass, you're getting 1 nail in the coffin. After Officer Marvin's death, we see Heather back at the police station. She's still looking through all the paperwork, and she comes to the summation that that group of armed men at the beginning of the movie are all murderers, and her family of Sawyers were completely innocent. Yes, they were completely innocent murderers and cannibals. So she leaves the police station very upset. She meets with her grandmother's lawyer at a bar, and he kind of yells at her for not reading the paperwork that he gave her because she finds out that her and Leatherface are actually cousins. After Heather finds out that her and Leatherface are cousins, she's picked up by Deputy Carl Hartman. He has her in the back of his police cruiser, and she pretty much knows by now that Deputy Carl and all these groups from the beginning are evil. Officer Carl takes Heather to the slaughterhouse where he ties her up and gags her. Leatherface hears all of this on the police radio, so Leatherface leaves the Verna's house and makes his way to the slaughterhouse so he can go kill Heather. Leatherface finds Heather tied up at the slaughterhouse, and right before he's about to kill her, he sees a scar on her chest. Now, this scar is something that Heather got while she was an infant from a pendant her mom was wearing that got really hot in the fire. And it left a scar on Heather's chest. Takes Heather's gag off.
It's Heather! It's your cousin!
And Leatherface takes his chainsaw and cuts one of her restraints loose. As soon as Leatherface cuts one of Heather's restraints loose, he's attacked by Bert Hartman and Ollie. Ollie is the gentleman that threw the first Molotov cocktail at the beginning of the movie. Heather is able to get away and she runs out of the slaughterhouse, but she decides to go back and save her cousin Leatherface, her cousin who killed all of her friends. So she goes back and she sees that Ollie and Bert are wrapping a chain around Leatherface's neck, and they're going to turn this machine on that's going to drag Leatherface into this large industrial meat grinder. Heather finds Ollie right after he just turned on this large industrial meat grinder. He turns around and Heather surprises him and stabs him in the gut with a pitchfork, killing him with some really bad CGI blood. Ollie, you're also going to get 1 nail in the coffin. You and Bert wasted a lot of time trying to kill Leatherface. Right there in the spot when you had him down after you finished beating him. But no, you wanted to kill him in this big, extravagant way, wrapping a chain around his neck that's going to slowly pull him into this large meat grinder. So for all that, you made some dumb decisions there, Ollie. So I think everyone's going to agree with me on this one as well. You're getting 1 nail in the coffin. After Heather kills Ollie, she goes over and she sees that Bert is still beating up her cousin Leatherface. Y'all knew this was coming. Heather picks up the chainsaw, tosses it to Leatherface, and she says the dumbest phrase in the entire Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise.
Do your thing, cuz.
After Leatherface gets his chainsaw back, he's able to start it. He fights off Bert. He takes a chainsaw and he cuts off Bert's feet. He's then able to knock Bert into this large industrial meat grinder where Bert is holding on with his hands. Leatherface has his chainsaw, cuts his hands off, and Bert slides down into this large grinder and he gets chopped up, dying in another really bad CGI blood effect. At an hour and 21 minutes in, we get our final on-screen kill in Texas Chainsaw 3D, and it is Mega Bert Hartman. And I'm sure you all have guessed it, he's also going to get one nail in the coffin. He wanted to grandstand and gloat, trying to kill Leatherface when they could have done it many times. They had a lot of chances as soon as they showed up to the slaughterhouse. You guys chose to gloat, and that's why you had your feet cut off, then your hands cut off, and then you died in a really horrible CGI blood effect being pushed into a meat grinder. So, may a Bert Hartman, one nail in the coffin. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are all my nail in the coffin ratings for Texas Chainsaw 3D. Let's do a summary. The 8 Sawyers in the beginning of the movie, including Boss Sawyer, Drayton Sawyer, and Grandpa, each had one nail in the coffin apiece. Loretta Sawyer had 2 nails in the coffin. Daryl had 1 nail in the coffin. Kenny, I gave him 2 nails in the coffin. Ryan had 1 nail in the coffin. Nikki, even though she was useless, I was still generous and gave her 2 nails in the coffin. Officer Marvin, a real moron, had 1 nail in the coffin. Ollie had 1 nail in the coffin, as well as Mayor Bert Hartman, 1 nail in the coffin. That gives us an average of 1.2 nails in the coffin for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D. Here's a summary of all the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies I've covered so far with their overall average nails in the coffin rating. The first Texas Chainsaw Massacre had an average of 1.4 nails in the coffin. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 had an average of 1.8 nails in the coffin. Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 had an average of 1.2 nails. Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Next Generation had an average of 1.7 nails. Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Remake had an average of 1.9 nails in the coffin. Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Beginning had an average of 2.1 nails in the coffin. And Texas Chainsaw 3D tying Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 3, had an overall average nails in the coffin rating of 1.2. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, only 2 more movies left in this franchise to cover. This movie was a direct sequel to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Our next movie, Leatherface, acts as a direct prequel to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So tune in next week to find out how that movie compares to the rest. Again, I want to thank everybody for checking out this video. I really do appreciate it. And if you haven't already, if you would not mind hitting that like button down below. And again, make a comment. Let me know what you thought, if you agree or disagree. How do you think the last 2 movies are going to fare with the overall average nails in the coffin? Which movie you think is going to have the lowest, and which movie you guys think is going to have the highest? And if you guys have not already, I'll really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me. And again, I really want to thank you guys for checking out this video. I want everybody to stay happy, stay safe, stay healthy. I am your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, and remember, with great kills, there must also come great nails.